Now that Mecha Break has officially released, we do have all 15 mechs to toy around with, and I've compiled a comprehensive and full tier list, playing through all 15 mechs, including the 3 brand new ones, and deep diving into each with all my reasons on why some are ranked higher than others. We'll go over fun factors, why each are better in different playlists, as well as some other notable details that will help you through your playthroughs. We got a ton to talk about. What's up, world? It's Joby here, back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Mecha Break. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm gonna go over each and every single mech, and yes, I have played all of them in literally every single mode there is. But before we jump into the actual tier list, I do want to thank Amazing Season Games for sponsoring this video. If you haven't already, you should 100% check out Mecha Break. You can do so by using the QR code provided on screen right now, or there's also a download link in my description. If you want to help out the channel, I really appreciate that you do visit that. You can download either the client or Xbox and Steam. The game features 12 free mechs that you get from day one, all with distinct playstyles, as you'll see throughout this video, and features a ton of modes like 6v6 Hero Shooter, 3v3 Deathmatch, and they even have an extraction mode, Mosh Mock. It's actually a ton of fun. It is worth to check out. Now let's jump into the actual tier list. So first off, I think this one is an easy one to label, and that's Narukami. Narukami is a very strong mech. This thing absolutely decimates the field out there and can put a lot of strain on your enemies. Basically an invisible sniper, it is insanely strong and has some of the best range, if not the best range, in the entire game itself, and even getting off some occasional one-shots, or at least ones that are on low HP. Now there are reasonings as why I rank Narukami where it is. So currently I actually do put Narukami in the S tier and not essentially S+. As you see, I do have S+, S, A, B, C, and D. The reason why I have added the S+ category is that they should be good in all different playlists. Now the reason Narukami doesn't make it into S+ is because this mech essentially is not very good in the arena mode, or at least I haven't seen it perform very well in the arena mode, and it seems to struggle a little bit in the extraction mode as well. You can make it work in that mode. This one is really good for Verge, but I just do think there are at least a couple of different mechs that will actually rank higher than Narukami, at least because of how much they have in their kit. Again, Narukami is very strong, but I do currently put it in the S tier. Next up, we do have another mech here, Stego. This is a lot of people's fan favorite, and this is a really strong mech. Its kit is very nice. You'll see it has a ton of defense rating. It can even load up here, and we can get a nice shield in front of us with a ton of damage that you can output. Doesn't, of course, have the best mobility, but this thing is strong in literally every single playlist, whether it's a Verge, Arena, or even the extraction mode, which is Mosh Mock. It has some very good damage. This one is a bit limited when you are in buildings, as your bomber ability will actually hit rooftops. You'll see that in some of the footage here. You can't get it off all the time. And that is the reason that I actually do put Stego in the S tier, is that when it is locked down into certain building maps, it can get a bit rough with its third ability charge here, which is the Micro Missile. Micro Missile is really strong, and it kind of does need to be utilized in his kit. However, unfortunately, as I said, when you are locked down inside of a building, or when you do play on those building arena maps, it can get a bit rough. So hence why I do put it in S tier and not S+. But this is a very strong mech, and it does trade blows with some of the ones that will be in S+. Again, other than that small limitation, that is the only reason why I do throw it in the S tier. Overall, it is a very strong mech. Or next up here, we do have one where I do consider in the S+ tier, and you probably guessed it by now, that is Welkin. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing gets nerfed. This is a very strong mech. It can just do insane damage. It has great boxing ability, and it even has some nice range to it. And there's even a decent defensive kit to it where it has this nice shield in front of it and even some recharge, as well as just having a little bit of some other utilizations to it. But the box itself is probably the best thing overall, as you can box people in and they can't leave, and you're also doing damage to them and even having range. There is so much to this kit here. It has some great things here, even with its melee ability as well as its unparryable melee. There is so much with this kit overall and this mech that it definitely needs to be in the S+ tier. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the first mechs we see nerfed, as I always see Welkin either getting MVP or doing top damage in nearly every game. Pretty much doesn't matter. This thing is all around great, whether it is in Verge or even Arena, and it still does very well in the extraction mode. It is very good for the ending PvP. Obviously not the best at the beginning when you are doing PvE stuff, but it is fairly good overall. For our fourth mech, we do have Panther. Now, this one might be a bit of a controversial one. There are players that are very, very good with Panther, but I've also seen people that are pretty terrible with Panther. Panther has a very unique kit, and where it does have a shield that you should constantly have up when you have this shield up, and essentially when it is broken or when an enemy does break it, you should use your 2 charge here to regenerate that shield, and you're constantly spamming that back and forth. You also do have some great shield mechanics here. You have a nice defensive kit, and you could swap to your melee ability here as well, and even doing those aerial strikes. And you do have a nice charge ability with melee where you can get up in people's faces, and there is even some to his kit overall that does allow for a little bit of range to it. But overall, this mech actually just does not perform well in either category. Again, people are really, really good with this mech. They're good in Verge, they're good in extraction mode, and I've even seen some people that are really good in arena with this mech, but it just does underperform. It has a ton of defense to it. It should be good overall, but it's just kind of falls flat, and there are better options for melee, whether it's Welkin, or we'll get to another mech that's actually, I think, preferred in this category. So this is one of the mechs that I actually do put in the C tier, so you will see this here. We are going to put Panther in C tier. It's not a D tier mech. It could fall into B tier, and it could even get into A tier, depending if you're playing with a really good player. Some people can even get this mech to do top damage, but it's just overall his kit's really bad, and people that are kind of mediocre can do really well with Welkin, where they're gonna struggle on Panther. Now this is gonna be a skill issue one here overall, and I'm not just ranking these based on skill issue, but Panther does kind of fall flat overall when you are picking different brawlers. There are better choices. If you more than likely should go with a Welkin. The medium brawler right now is just not in a good spot, and even light brawler is a bit better. We'll get into all of those, but yes, right now Panther is just a bit rough. I've seen a lot of people rank this one pretty low as well, so yeah, it is a bit in a rough state. Next up here, we have Skyraider. Now, I've gone back and forth on where I want to put this one. It does pretty decent. It is a fun one to actually play and fly around with, and it could do some fairly decent damage. Again, this one's going to be pairing up against Falcon, really, and I just kind of, because I'm pairing it against Falcon and a few other, I do actually end up putting this one in the C tier. Now, it does, like I said, decent damage. It can be fun to play. It can output some decent damage with it overall. It does have good range abilities. It does have to charge up a lot of its attacks in order to actually do fairly decent damage. And it can put out this AoE damage that will also do some decent damage or damage over time, at least for the area effect or the AoE. But overall, I honestly will just put this one in the C tier along with Panther. I'm just not a huge fan of it, and I think there are better choices. Like I said, Falcon's going to be one of those that will actually rank higher. We'll get to that eventually. But yeah, as of right now, I do put Skyraider in C tier. It's a bit of a controversy there. I know some people will say Skyraider is actually fairly decent, and I have seen some people top damage and get MVP as Skyraider, but I just don't think overall it is a good mech in comparison to others. You can make this one work. Does, at least should have it from its kit, but I think that it is just a very, very high skill ceiling one that's going to be a bit rough to play around with, especially for newer players, and I think it's just going to be a hard one overall to actually master. So unfortunately right now I do actually scale this one a bit low at C tier. You could make an argument for why it would be in B tier, but as of right now I am putting it in C. Next up, we do have Stellaris. Now this is actually one of my personal favorite mechs, and I'm trying to avoid my bias there. I have seen this champ MVP a lot. I've MVP'd on Stellaris a lot. It does a ton of damage. It's great for behind the lines. You have a full stealth mechanic here and stealth mechanism that you can get behind enemy lines, just like Narukami, but this thing you can actually pop stealth. You actually don't need to deploy drones or anything. And you actually have a hook on ability here, as you can see, that you hook at players. It's really, really good to utilize that hook. It is so nice for catching Falcon and a few other mechs. I love that one overall. And it even has some range here with it, and the range is really nice. And the melee is really good with it. There's some great melee that you can do. Literally kind of even has Welkin AoE kit there, at least that spinning ability with its secondary attack. And you even do get a little bit of range with it, with that melee. You're also seeing here, we're getting a bit of range here, and it just does really good damage. You see, we evade their entire shield bar there. We actually go right through it, or right through their fluid armor. It is just a very, very good kit overall. I would put this one in S tier, but I have seen arguments as why it's A tier. Again, I'm kind of trading back and forth with it. I think this one is really good, and I myself would put it in S tier. As of right now, though, I am going to be putting this one in A tier for what it is. It is probably one of the better light brawlers, but there's just ones that do better, at least for your team. Your Welkin is probably going to outperform it, as well as your Stego and Narukami, but it is a really good champion, and it is super fun to play. If this was based on only fun factors, I would put this one in S tier, but as of right now, it's going to go in A. Moving on, we have our first healer of the bunch, and yes, this is Pinaka. You've probably seen a lot of people play this one. This is a very easy champ to play overall. Very fun too, and actually with the healing, and does some great regeneration, and you could even do some fair damage. It actually performs decently well in the extraction mode, which I had some decent times with. And obviously it's really good in Arena, it's really good in Verge. You're definitely going to want a Pinaka on your team overall, and it's just obviously one of the better mechs to be running in a full 6-man, and even in a 3-man team, as long as they can output that damage. Again, it does some fairly decent damage with it. It has that little right-click ability here that does some nice damage when you are close. This is not going to avoid fluid armor at all, but it still can help with the team, and just has some great mechanics. Really, you're not going to be utilizing your shield wall a ton, but you can, and you can see it even does some decent damage to an enemy if you can hit them with it. So it can be utilized, and it can have some good placement in Verge and Arena, so you can mix and match with that. But of course, the rest of its kit just going to be really good for giving your team shields. You can obviously provide to yourself for shields, and you do have those drones that are also going to be healing you and your teammates. So overall, the kit for Pinaka is insane and will be a really good healer. So it is going to go right into S tier. I don't think it is an S+, because it just doesn't have the damage output. If it had crazy damage output, it could be up there with Welkin. But you're really going to want Pinaka on your team, and it is a very good healer. It is just like Stego and Narukami. It's a great choice for a mech. Next up here we have Aquila. It is a great sniper, and again with its kit, it's going to be very good overall. It has a ton of utilization here, and its air kit is very nice because you can hang out really far away, and you do have that very far range here where you can see we get a ton of range on our screen. We basically can target anything within this path here. It is absolutely insane. The only problem with this kit overall is that once it loses this air time, it's going to struggle a little bit on the ground. It's not going to have the best performance. It still can. You could still get plenty of eliminations with it, and it still does some decent damage. You actually notice that Aquila will probably be one of the higher damaging mechs on your team, but because it does kind of lose all of its abilities here once it gets taken out of the air, and I just have seen Narukami perform better across the board, I do have to unfortunately put it in the A tier. Again, the reason why is because Narukami is just a better overall one to choose, and the Aquila is not going to be as good in Arena either because you need more airtime, and most of the Arena maps are going to be very closed in and boxed in, so when you're kind of up close, you're not going to be performing as well, and it just doesn't have the same damage output that Narukami has, where teammates can go back and get healed by Pinaka. Aquila is just not going to output the damage to take them down, so I do unfortunately have to put it in A tier. It's still a great choice, and you will see the Aquilas do high damage, and you can even see them take MVP. Again, overall, I just think Narukami is a better pick for your team, but you will see the Aquila will perform decently well, and even sometimes outperform a Narukami, but consistently wise, I have seen Narukami play better, and it is one of my personal favorites, so I do think that Narukami is a better pick overall, so that's why I put it in the A tier. This mech right here is one of my least favorite mechs to play. Now, this could be a personal bias I'm trying to avoid here, and I have seen this mech perform well, but overall, I just believe it. Right now, the kit is just not in a good place. This was actually the last revealed mech, and that is the Serenith. Again, I have seen it do well, but its kit, in just my opinion, is not good. And the reason being is because its secondary weapon here really doesn't perform well in certain scenarios, because people are going to move out of it by the time that it lands, so it's pretty useless, although it can fare somewhat well in the extraction mode occasionally when people group up, and it can fare well in arena mode since it is more locked down. But in Verge, where people are moving around a ton, you're really not going to hit a lot of people with this unless you get a Welkin to lock someone down. It requires so much of your team to be participating with this one that I just think that it's just not a good mech overall. Again, its kit has some decent stuff to it, where it actually does have some really cool mechanics. You can fool your team and turn into a spy from TF2, It has some pretty decent stuff that make it actually a lot of fun. You can also increase its mobility and make it untargetable, which makes it really cool. Again, more spy mechanics, and you even have a radar system. It has, like I said, some really cool stuff with it, and actually you would think would be good in performance-wise. At least it does on paper have that stuff, but in practice, it's just not a good mech in my opinion. And it is the first mech that I am going to go ahead and put in D tier, as I just feel it is not a good mech overall. And I've seen it perform really bad. In fact, this is some of the worst performing mechs I've ever seen it played as Serenith. I have seen it take MVP one time, but you can do it with literally every mech in the game, so that shouldn't take away from it. It's just not performing well nearly across the board, and you're better off taking literally pretty much anything else in here. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I do put this one in D tier. Moving on, we actually do have another one that is under a 7-day trial, or at least 15,000 mission points to get, and that is one of the newer ones that's called Inferno. Inferno has some really decent stuff here with its kit overall, and it actually does play very fun. It is a very fun mech to play. It has some nice AoE, it has great single target, and it actually does at least feel like it would be very good. Now, I've seen a lot of people use this mech in pretty much every match. I've seen people do really well with it, but I haven't really seen a lot of MVP with Inferno. Again, great single target damage as you see there. It does have some decent AoE damage. It's actually really good at hunting Narukamis that are hiding, because it will tag all of the Narukamis in the area. So any of them that are being invis, it will kind of just tag them up even if they have more drones down. So it's great at like pinning those out. So I do think it has some utilization there. Unfortunately, I just think it does fall flat in some scenarios, and I do think this is a heavy team-based one. You really do have to play on other teammates to help you out here, since the range is not incredible with this mech. It could have some better range. There are mechs that do have decent better range with it. It does have that single target ability if you do charge up both here. You see that if we're charging up both of ours, we can actually get a single target here, but it's kind of pushing us back. And with the mountainous terrain and verge and a few other things, it can knock you off cliffs. So I do think it does have a bit of a problem there, and it can be a bit of an issue. I'm going to go ahead, after my practicing with it, trying to play around with it, and just kind of seeing how other people use it. Again, I've never seen this one be VIP. In fact, this is one of the only ones I've never seen really top the charts like that. But they do really well. They do a lot of damage. I am going to put this one in A tier currently, as I do believe it's by Stellaris and Aquila. I do think it can put out good damage. It can be really good, but I don't think it's a must-have choice for every single match. At least not like Narukami or Stego or Welkin or even a Pinaka. I just don't think it has the same type of merit. It's a great overall pick. It's just not a must pick. It's not like you need to have this one on your team to succeed, but it can do really good damage. Here we have another healer, and the only second healer in the game, or the only other healer in the game. This is a light healer. I actually really like this class. I think it's a ton of fun to play. I think the fun factor actually does kind of drive it up a bit. Now, a lot of people have kind of argued that it doesn't have good range, which I think you could argue that the range on it is just not as good as it should be, and it can have some issues, but mobility has been really good. It did get slightly buffed, I believe, from the beta, so and their kit was kind of redone a little bit. They used to have these drones which would target on a player, but now you just kind of shoot the player in general, and then they get that little debuff there. You used to have to target them and then send a drone at them, but now you shoot it at them, so it did get a little bit of a buff, and I think it actually did need it, and it does actually evade their fluid armor, which is nice, and I do think it can actually really output some decent damage, and also has some really good healing. I prefer this one over Pinaka. However, I do think Pinaka is a better overall healer, and they're going to out-heal you, and they might even out-damage you, but I do think this one is more fun to play. So for the fun factor purposes, I am actually putting this one in A tier. I'm not going to put it in S tier, as I don't think it's a must like Pinaka, but it is still a decent one, and it's a healer, so you might as well play it, or at least have a healer on a team, especially in Verge. You're going to need it. Might not always need it in Arena, but in Verge, you're definitely going to want a healer, and especially in Extraction mode, the Mashmak, you really do want a healer, unless you have the repair drones, or constantly finding repair kits around. You really are going to want a healer with you, and Luminae is still a decent pick there. Next up here we have Hurricane. I've gone back and forth with this one on where I want to place it in the tier. I've tried to play it on and off. I've kept trying to go, what can this be? I hated it at first, then I was liking the kit, then I kind of disliked it. I've gone back and forth where I really want to place this one. It has some great AoE potential. It does some decent damage. And again, its kit overall is decently fun. The really cool ability here is this shield attack or shield thing that you can place down where people accidentally will target this. If you kind of hide around this, it's really strong because it makes them target, and it's really hard to get off that lock-on once you have it. It really honestly is very annoying to play against, and I've seen Hurricanes do very, very well. But I also don't think it's a must pick, and I don't think it's one of these stronger ones. I've only seen it really take MVP once and do somewhat decent damage overall. Normally they are usually lower end on the damage. Nice shield abilities here, great defense. It is still a decent pick, and it can be really good to utilize in certain situations and can even bait out different team mechanics. And I think once people play the game more, they probably will lean toward Hurricane eventually. But as of right now, because Hurricane isn't just an insane mech and doesn't have some crazy output here, it is actually my first B tier mech. So I am slapping this one in B tier. Again, I would pick anything else other than like Inferno, I think is better. Aquila is better. I think Stellaris is better as well. But a Hurricane on your team isn't always a bad pick, and it's definitely a better play than Panther or even Skyraider or especially Serenith right now, in my opinion. I do think, though, Hurricane right now, of course, with its kit, is just a B tier. Moving on here, we have another controversial mech. This one has been placed in S tier. I've seen a B tier. I've seen it all over the place. People have kind of ranked this one as it is. I believe Tricera is very, very good. I think it's very strong, and I think people might be either not playing it right because of certain game modes, especially like on Verge. If you have the payload, Tricera is a must-take, in my opinion, because you can sit on the payload and just take down enemies. It's so strong there, and you can constantly unpop and repop your shield. I don't think people know that, is that even if they take down your shield here, if they pop one down, you can literally unpop your shield and repop it, and you will gain all of those shields back. So I think that's why people don't understand that they can do that. It's a really, really strong ability there. And you also get your 3 ability, which is like a missile launcher here that does a ton of damage and will even cut through some of the shield. It's just a very strong champion, and you're putting out, or strong mech rather, and you're putting out great damage, great consistent damage, and you can lock down points. It's really good in all playlists. The only thing it kind of struggles in a little bit is extraction mode because of its mobility. It's very slow, but it's still good overall. Again, extraction mode, it's not going to be the best in Mosh, but it's great in Arena and it's great in Verge. So if you do play those modes, but I'm still placing it in the S+ tier because it is very good in both Arena and Verge. It isn't great in the Mosh. Not everybody's playing that playlist, again, only because of its mobility and just overall kit when you are actually moving around. But I do believe overall it is an S+ champion or S+ mech just because of the fact that you can spam pop these abilities or spam pop this shield here. Because people that aren't doing that, I feel like they kind of are mixing and matching with that. And unfortunately, I feel like some might not understand the kit, but I still believe because of how well it does in payload and how well it does in several of the Verge missions and even how decent it does in Arena, it is kind of a must pick in some of these categories and some of these playlists. So that's why I'm putting it in S+ tier, because I believe that it is a must take with those specific modes. Here we have the starting mech that most people are used or utilized in the beta, or at least had right off the bat. This is the Alysnes. Now, Alysnes, I've gone back and forth with what I want. I like this mech overall. I do like how it performs. And obviously the kit with it is really good. The respawn ability is kind of insane with this kit, and it is really fun with that. And I think it's a great starting mech. It just has some really cool stuff with it. You get melee, you get range, you also get a parry mechanic and defense with it, as well as respawning, which is insane. And some decent range missiles here that you can see will actually do some decent damage. And a lot of people are putting this one at least really high on the boards, but the reason why I do rank it a little bit lower than that and pull back from that is just that it seems like it just doesn't do a ton of damage overall and doesn't really, it's kind of like a jack of all trades in my opinion. It can respawn infinitely, and basically you should never get eliminated as an Alysnes unless you get super focused and a Welkin locks you down and you can't regen your respawn, or that's on cooldown. If you're kind of evading things for 150 seconds though, at a time with that cooldown, you really can respawn infinitely. But then again, you're really taken out of the battle for 150 seconds if you can't respawn. So that's currently why I am putting the Alysnes in the B tier along with Hurricane. I just feel like, unfortunately, it doesn't have a ton of utilization in a lot of different areas. It can do that infinite respawn thing, which you might say why it would make it into A tier. Again, I don't think it's a must pick like S tier. but you could make an argument as why it's an A tier. Currently, I think it's a B tier just because its only really utilization is that respawn mechanic. Now, last but not least, I do have Falcon. Now, I've gone back and forth with this one as well on where I want to place it. I've seen other tier lists, as I said, other articles talking about it. I've also played this one a ton, trying to get it down, and I do think it has some great stuff with it. This is a better choice, in my opinion, than Skyraider, and it also could just be a skill issue for me for where I'm placing it or what I'm doing. There are some different things that you can do with it, where if you're doing alt and spacebar, or if you're pulling back in spacebar or shift and spacebar, you can do this rotate around. There also is the alt and spacebar where you're kind of going like this, and that does have some nice utilization with it. So there is like some really cool keybinds. I think unfortunately on PC the keybinds are a bit rough, at least in my opinion, that it does kind of make it a little bit hard. S and alt isn't the most favorable on the hands, at least for mine with my thumbs. Now if you do re-keybind it or use a controller, you might actually prefer Falcon. I play a mouse and keyboard, so for me it's not the best for that, and I do think it might come down to the flying mechanic, although I also feel like the Falcons I've seen play absolutely terribly or really, really good. And because of that, I do feel like it lands in the middle. And I also feel like it's not the best in arena mode. It's great in Mosh Mock though, and it is really good in Verge. But because it kind of falls short in the locked down arenas because you're kind of boxed in, I do feel like it kind of loses some ground there. And it can do some great damage, do some great flybys. You have some really cool skill ceiling here with this, using that fly mechanic, and if you are utilizing a controller or different keybinds, you probably can play with this one a lot more than normal, or at least have a really good playstyle with it. But right now, I have kind of gone back and forth. I am putting it in B tier. Now, this is at the top of B tier, though. It is more than likely an A-. If I had an A- tier, Falcon would be on its own, right underneath Luminae and Aquila and Inferno and Stellaris. Because I have those there, though, I can't put them in the same. I cannot put it with Stellaris or Inferno because I just feel like those do have better utilization and people perform much better on average with Stellaris and Inferno, and the win rate overall from what I've looked up on Falcon actually does kind of mirror more in the middle section here, like a B tier because of that. So I am putting it in a A- or B+ area right here. It could even be above Luminae. You could make an argument why Luminae would be B tier and Falcon would be A tier. So you could trade those out. They're right back and forth each other, so they're kind of next to each other here in this. But this is kind of where I place all of the mechs in my opinion. I know a lot of people really want Falcon in A tier. Again, more than likely he is like an A- or B+. He's right there on the edge of that, and it's really just because of the fact that people are struggling with him a lot, and some people are really good with him. And just overall, you can make all of these mechs work. Like any mech on here can be S+ tier if you're really good with it. So it's not just like these are the picks here, but I do think these are must plays. And at least this whole section here is a must play. You at least want one of these on your team at all times. And you're probably always going to see a Welkin, Tricera, Narukami, Stego, and Pinaka. At least one of those will be on your team. I'd be surprised if you get these batch. And this is the only players that you see. You're pretty much going to get one of these on your team here. So that's why I would rank these like this. I do think it's a fair overall ranking. I've tried to do a lot of research on this. As I said, I have over like 50 hours played at this point on this game. I put in a ton of work playing through each of these mechs. Got all the trial periods so that I can play through them for you guys. Try to put out as much footage as I can, and do realize that some of these placements here, let me know if you do have an argument for why you'd place a mech in a different area. We can have a discussion down below, and we'll try to keep it civil with that. As I said, there'll probably be people complaining about Falcon not being an A tier at least, but I do have arguments for why it is around the middle. Again, I just want to say thank you to the amazing CSUN Games for sponsoring today's video, and if you do appreciate my content and coverage of Mecha Break, if I could just ask that you visit the link down below in the description or the QR code on screen. And if you haven't already, of course, check out Mecha Break through there as well. It's a great game, and it really is a lot of fun. Overall, that's about covered for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like, and subscribe, and until the next one. Deuce!